Good morning, everybody. Welcome for another session for Business Studies Grade 10. We are continuing with our topic, which is forms of ownership. Previously, if you still remember, we said we have 6 forms of ownership that are sole proprietor, which means the sole trader, partnership, close corporations, non-profit companies, profit companies, and cooperatives. Right. Also from this, remember, we have different types of profit companies. We have a private company, we have a personal liability company, we have a public company, and state-owned companies. So whenever you want to start your own company, most likely you will need to start a company so that you can make profit. You can choose among these 4 types of companies, except for state-owned company, right? And also, lastly, of course, we have cooperative is another form of ownership, right? Also, you should be comfortable with the vocabulary and the terminology that we use. Capital, remember, those are assets or money that is invested by the owners of the business. We have legal personality. We said all companies, remember, they have legal personality. All companies, they have legal personality. And also, it might also be called separate legal entity. It means the same. If we say legal personality or separate legal entity, it means exactly the same, right? So remember, companies and close corporations have legal personality or they have separate legal entity, meaning this means that they are seen as legal separate. They are seen as legally separate from their owners. So okay, it means the company and the owners are treated separately. They are not seen as a joint thing or as one thing, but they are treated separately as 2 separate people. Is that okay? So a company is seen as a person on its own, and you as the owner, you are seen as a natural person on your own separately. So therefore, a company will be treated as a human being, but not a natural human being, but as an artificial human being. That's why it is allowed to employ people. That's why it is allowed to sign contracts in its name. That's why it's allowed to have its own name, just like you as a person, you have your own name, because a company is treated as a being or as a person on its own, right? That's what is called separate legal entity. But it does not happen when it comes to partnership and sole traders. Partnership and sole proprietors do not have a legal personality. So it means whatever happens in a partnership and a sole proprietor, they should happen in the name of the owners, because those 2 things, they're exactly the same. They are not separated, right? But companies and close corporations, they have legal personality. Remember that. And then also here we have continuity of existence. It's either called continuity or it's called continuity of existence. Here we are talking about the ability of the company to carry on operating after the death or retirement of the owners, right? So if the business is able to continue operating after the death or retirement of one or more owners, it means it has continuity of existence. All companies and close corporations have continuity of existence, but partnership and sole traders also, they do not have continuity of existence. Remember that terminology is very important. And then we also go to liability. Same here. Liability, guys, the question is whether is it limited or unlimited liability. That's the whole question that we have to know. Unlimited, like that, right? That's the only thing. The only liability, it refers to the responsibility of the owners to pay the debts of the company, of the business, So if the owners have the responsibility for the debts of the business, we say they have unlimited liability. But if the owners do not have responsibility for the debts of the business, it means they have limited liability. So all companies and closed corporations, they have limited liability. This means that the owners only lose the money that they put in the business, then they cannot lose their personal belongings, or their personal belongings may not be attached to the business when the business goes bankrupt or insolvent and they want to pay the debts of the business, right? So the owners will not lose their personal belongings to pay for the debts of the business. But unlimited liability, it means that the owners may lose their personal belongings in order to pay for the debts of the business. So here, companies, limited liability applies to companies. All companies, let me write companies and closed corporations. Companies and closed corporations, XCCs, have limited liability. They have limited liability, except, please, except a personal liability company. Except a personal liability company. Unlimited liability, sole proprietor, sole trader, and partnerships. Those ones, they have unlimited liability. Remember that, right? That's another terminology that you might need to be know. All right, and also after that, for formation procedures or legal formalities, we call them legal formalities. Sole proprietor and partnership do not have legal formalities. When we want to start them, they're easily, you can start them without registering them. But companies, they have legal procedures for information. You need to follow the procedure for you to form them. Joint and several liable, this refers to business with more than one owner, and it means that all the owners are responsible for the actions of each other and for the debts of the business, despite who caused the debt, right? That's what we mean by right. Another thing now that we need to know is the difference between these companies. Now, first of all, we want to talk about the difference between private and public company. Remember, guys, if you are not sure about what is a private company, public company, go to the notes that we did previously. I explained in detail about private company, personal liability company, and then another one I explained about public companies and state-owned company. The main difference between private companies and public companies is that private companies may not offer shares to the general public. It means they may not sell their shares or issue shares to the general public. But public company, they are allowed to trade or sell these shares to the public through the market for shares, which is called the JSE, Johannesburg Stock Exchange. That's the major difference. That's why this one is called private company, because it can only offer its shares in private. This one is called public company because it can offer or sell its shares to the public, and it does it publicly by selling it on the market for shares, which is the JSE, right? Also, remember, another difference is that shares in a private company are not freely transferable. It means they are not easily, you cannot transfer them easily from one person to the next. But in public companies, they're freely transferable. It means it's quite easy. If you invest in a public company and you don't want to have those shares anymore, you can easily sell them and another person can easily buy them. It's easy to transfer. But for private company, it's quite difficult. It's different, right? Also, in terms of number of directors, private companies, they only need a minimum of one director. Remember, it's a minimum, so it's at least one director. They can have more than one, but they should have at least one, right? But public companies, they should have at least 3 directors. It means they should have at least a CEO, they should have at least a financial director, and maybe a chief officer and another director. They should be at least 3. They cannot be less than 3, right? Also, in terms of their name The name of a private company ends with Pty Ltd, which means proprietary limited, but the name of a public company ends with only limited or Ltd, right? And in terms of auditing, private companies, they do not need to be audited or published their financial statements. Financial statements, guys, it means the statement that shows how much profit did they make, as well as the state of the finances of the business, right? But a public company, it is compulsory and they are compelled by the law to disclose, to audit their financial statements, as well as to publish them to the general public. The main reason is that, remember, shares for public companies are sold to the public, so this company belongs to the public, so therefore they are supposed to publish those statements to the public so that people know what is happening in the company, right? That's another difference. So please remember any three differences here, and you can use them whenever I ask you to differentiate between private company and a public company, right? And then the last difference is that private company, they do not need to publish a prospectus. Please remember this document, guys. The documentation that we talk about here, please remember it. I'll talk about it now. But a public company, they need to publish a prospectus. A prospectus is a document that is used by a public company to sell itself and also to give to investors so that they can know more about the company. Is that okay? That's what is called that's a prospectus. So before investors invest in a public company, they usually receive a prospectus and they read that prospectus to see exactly what's happening in the company. It talks about the type of business that they're involved in. It talks about the number of shares that are there, the responsibilities, the number of directors that are there, and stuff like that. All the information that they need to know about the company before they invest in it is in the prospectus. So this applies only to public companies. They are the ones that are supposed to register and publish a prospectus with the CIPC, which is Companies Intellectual Property Commission. But private companies, they don't need to do that. Why? Because they don't need to sell their company to investors. They can approach people in privately, so they do not need to register and publish a prospectus. It's not required for a private company. Please remember these differences. Remember also, before we spoke about difference between a private company and a personal liability company. You need to know the difference between those two as well. They are different, right? Also, right, so after this, we need also to look at the difference between a private company and a state-owned company. Is that okay? They are more or less the same. Also, there's not much difference. This one the name ends with Pty Ltd. The state-owned company, sorry, here it's not supposed to be saying state-owned company. It's supposed to say personal liability company. That's the one that I want to talk about. Personal liability company, right? The main difference between a private company and a personal liability company is that this one, the name ends with Pty Ltd. This one ends with NINC. That's how you see that it's a personal liability company. And the major biggest difference is that under private company, directors are not liable for the debts of the business. Is that okay? This means that there is limited liability. Directors have limited liability. Right. But under the personal liability company, directors have unlimited liability. The directors, remember I'm saying directors, the directors are the ones with unlimited liability here. But under personal liability company, the directors have limited liability. Please, that's the biggest difference here. It means that here, private company, if the company goes to bankruptcy or it's insolvent, the directors, they don't lose their personal belongings and they don't lose anything, right? Because they have limited liability. They are not personally responsible for the debts of the business. But under personal liability company, they are personally responsible for those debts of the business. It means their personal belongings may be attached or may be used to pay the debts of the company under here. And also remember, under personal liability company, the directors are jointly and severally responsible for the debts of the business. Here, so it says they are personally liable. It can also say they are jointly and severally liable for the debts of the business. That's the major difference between a private company and a personal liability company. Please remember that difference. The rest of the stuff between private company and personal liability company is exactly the same. The advantages and disadvantages and the characteristics are exactly the same, except for these 4 things. So please be able to tell me about these 4 things. I hope you understand that difference. Right, moving forward, today also we are going to talk just a little bit about non-profit companies. Right, as the word suggests, it says non-profit companies. It means a company whose intention is not to make profits. That's what I call a non-profit company. Right, sorry, let me just go back there. Right here. Alright, just give me a moment. I'm just fixing the page. Right. So here, non-profit companies, we are saying here, it's a company that is formed with an intention not to make profit. Right. So, but its intention is for the public benefit. The main reason why we have non-profit companies is to benefit the public. Most non-profit companies, they provide public services and they provide public goods and services so that they can benefit the community, they can benefit the society, or they can benefit the country at large without them making a profit. That's our non-profit companies. Right, what are the characteristics? Main characteristic is to provide service and not to make profit. That's the biggest characteristic there. And also after that, they are funded by donations. Most non-profit companies, they receive their capital from donations and from foreign funding. Companies usually, they get their capital from investors or from those people who start their companies. Right, that's where they get the money. But these ones, they get the money from donations and foreign funding. Right, and also the name of the company, it ends with NPC, which means non-profit company, to make it easy. It's quite easy. And all the profits that are made in that company, their primary objective is to be used for public benefit and nothing else. If the company makes a profit. So we are saying here, it's a non-profit company, but if it happens that sometimes they can make a profit, those profits are used for public benefit and they are not distributed to shareholders, right? And also it must prepare a memorandum of incorporation just like another company and register with the register of companies just like another company. But also another characteristic is that there are some of the non-profit companies are exempt from paying tax. It means they may not pay tax, but not all of them, some of them. Is that okay? Good examples of non-profit companies are churches. Most churches, of course, I know nowadays you may disagree, but yeah, most churches actually, they are established with intention of benefiting the public spiritually and stuff like that. We also have those companies that those non-profit companies that deal with rehabilitation of addicts, companies that deal with those HIV and AIDS, companies that deal with also health of people in the community, that companies that deal with entrepreneurship to help develop skills of people in the society. That's usually those kind of benefits that they usually do in the society, right? What are the advantages? Profits are solely used for benefit of the business and for the benefit of the public. And also another advantage is they provide social services at various communities at affordable prices or at no price at all, for free. That's the advantage of non-profit companies. And also tax exemption. Exemption, it means they won't be allowed to pay tax. They may not pay tax, so they are tax exempt. The main disadvantage is they need professional assistance to set up a non-profit company. It's not easy to set up a non-profit company. You need someone professional. And also another disadvantage is they may not have enough donations to pursue their objectives, because they only rely on donations, and sometimes people, they don't feel like donating, and that's when they start to have problems with capital. So that's why we say they do not generate enough capital to cover their expenses, and also the donations may not always be enough. And so please, those are some of the disadvantages of non-profit companies. Okay guys, thank you very much for today. I hope you understand it. Remember guys, the differences between private company and public company, difference between private company and personal liability company. Remember the non-profit companies, its characteristics, the advantages and disadvantages. Remember as well the state-owned companies. Is that okay? It's very important. You need to know that about state-owned companies, right? And then the last thing that we're left with, that we're going to do next week, are cooperatives, and then we are done with the topic and everything is done. Thank you very much guys. Have a blessed day. May God bless you.